All right. Okay. It's my belief that everyone needs to be a better storyteller. I really think that if we're not telling good stories, we're just repeating other jargon that we hear other people say. And to tell stories means to it doesn't necessarily mean write a novel or have a great blog post or do this wonderful thing, but it's an intention, a thoughtful speaking to an audience, to whoever if you're a musician, if you're a photographer, if you're a writer, if you're a mom, like there's always something that you're trying to convey, and it always conveys best in story. Before we can get into like the real heart of why we need story, we have to understand the structure of story. So that's where we're going this week is story structure. Story structure has been studied a lot. One of my favorite mentors, if I can call him that, never met him, but I've read a lot of his work, is Joseph Campbell, and he did a ton of work in understanding myths and understanding myths from every single religion all over the place, and realized that there is a collective conscience to it all. There's the same arc, there's the same theme that we see throughout it. And so we're going to get into that. And then but first I'm going to break it down into something a little bit more simple. Just 4 steps that we can just remember whenever we're writing a story of this is typically what stories need to have. And they're this: character, circumstance, choice, and change. You have your character. They are in some sort of circumstance that leads them to have this choice, this left or right situation, and then there's a change in them. It is either, they choose stay status quo or go for a new status quo. Those are the 4 things, 4 C's. Let's say them again: character, circumstance, choice, and change. Then we're done with that. Moving on. We're going a little bit deeper into it. Okay. And this gets a little nerdy. It gets extremely nerdy. So it goes like this. It's a circle, right? And you start at the top where, well, there is no top of a circle. It just depends on your perspective. But that's not for right now. Status quo is where we begin. We find our character, status quo, living a normal life. Pretty basic, this is his culture. He's grown up living like this. Then there's a call to adventure. Someone comes, maybe it's maybe a droid, and it says, help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope. And he goes, oh, maybe I should find out who this Obi-Wan is. And so that leads to an adventure, a call to an adventure, to find old Ben. Finds old Ben, then he is, he talks to him for a little bit, whatever. Guy says some stuff, he mulls it over, decides to go back to his place. His aunt and uncle are dead. So, then we go into number 3, spiritual aid. This is a force outside of his culture moving him. So in Wizard of Oz, this was the tornado. It moved her into a different world, into a different culture. Okay? And these could be physical worlds, it could be spiritual, mental, whatever worlds. This is all in but the structure is all the same. Okay? So then you cross into a threshold, you have a whole bunch of trials, and you run into some issues, you find some companions, some mentors, and you run into more issues, more trials, and then you have a little battle here, a little success, little treasure, bigger treasure, more trials, trials, all this stuff. It's a road, it's a journey. He's charting his own path through this world that he's never been in. There's no one to really tell him exactly what to do, except the mentor kind of tells him something, but then it's like so abstract that he's like, what? Okay. Then we have a moment in which the hero almost dies from a battle. A moment when he is so exhausted and he has used all of his force and he's just depleted. But he doesn't die. He's saved. Right? But part of him dies. This is a key thing of life. Like, if you are going to move forward, part of you has to die so you can continue to move past, because we only have so much in us. We can only move forward so much. So part of us has to die for another part to move on. And that's a hard process. It's a painful process, but it's a good process. Okay. So part of him dies. He moves forward, a better person. Has a final battle, slays that dragon, and is reborn a new person, recognized by others as being someone that's resurrected from the dead, someone that has transformed into this new life, this new glorious, wonderful, whatever it is, something that is awe-inspiring, right? And then with that new form, with that new structure of himself, he sets up a new status quo, a new culture, a new whatever. So we know this structure, right? And I really think that it's imperative for us to shape the way, to like really break our brain, break the way that we've looked at stories our entire lives. And that gets us to analyze them better whenever we break our brain. So, how are we going to break our brain this week? We are going to take a story that we know by heart and flip it on its head. An outline is fine. It's just to get us to stop thinking in this way of that we've always thought about these stories, and get us to see that its perspective shifts that make these stories impactful to us. Like, for instance, okay, I decided to do Shrek. Everybody knows Shrek. If you don't, whatever. Watch it. And then come back to this. I'm not going to explain Shrek. But I am going to explain Shrek as if Lord Farquaad was the hero in this story. So I had to do a little bit of creative thinking to make him the hero, but here's what I've got. Lord Farquaad, he was cursed at birth, and so he is short, and the only way that he can become full-statured is to have the kiss of his true love. But nobody wants to kiss a short man, so he is cursed for what seems like forever, and ridiculed by these, terrible fairy creatures that have no law and don't obey his, commandments in his land, and just make fun of him constantly. And so he finally gets fed up, and he grows more and more and more calloused in his heart, and finally says, enough. Here's a law that I'm going to put in place. All you fairy creatures, if you break any of these rules, you have to be sent to Shrek's swamp. And he has killed many of my men. I mean, he eats eyeball soup for breakfast. So there's clearly some men that Shrek has killed. He has blood on his hands. So Shrek gets upset. All these fairy creatures come in, and he hates the fairy creatures as much as Lord Farquaad does. Goes to Lord Farquaad, kills a couple of his guys, maims them a little bit. Maybe not kill, maims. And is finally stopped by Lord Farquaad's army. And gets sent out onto this journey to find this, princess in a castle. And then, in Lord Farquaad's perspective, which is where I am changing this story to be, he doesn't see or hear from anybody for months. And so he's just there's a lot of waiting involved. And he's, getting anxious and nervous that maybe he's not going to find his true love and have these beautiful long legs. But then he gets word. Shrek is back with his bride, and he goes out, rides out as fast as he can to go meet her. and he's immediately in love. And he gets off his horse, and as he gets down with his stubby little legs, he sees such disappointment in her eyes at how tiny he is. And he thinks, maybe she's not the one. Maybe I'm not going to get my legs. And so he goes to his wise man, and he's like, yo, I don't think she likes my short legs, man. He said, the wise man says, sometimes true love does not happen overnight, so give it time. So he decides to go ahead with the wedding, and wedding day, he is so jazzed, and he's about to kiss her, and then Shrek walks in the door. And then a dragon out of nowhere eats him. The end. What a tragedy. So, what I want you to do this week is write a story, even if it's a simple nursery rhyme. Like, the Three Little Pigs, Red Riding Hood, Brave Little Toaster. That's not whatever you want to write. Just write something that in your heart. Like, you don't have to go back and read it. You know the story. No problem. You've seen it a million times. You've read it a million times. It's in you. Write it from a different character's perspective. And try to think, one, creatively, and two, objectively about why would the protagonist act this way? Or why would the antagonist act this way? Like, what happened to the villain that made him like this? And then that gives you empathy to write the rest of the story in perspective of that person. Okay. Till next week, guys. Be well. Do good work. Stay disciplined. Peace.